Part 111. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1103. Mu Yangling bit the tip of her tongue, exerted a little force. The pain and sweetness made her wake up. She forced herself to look away from Qi Heiran, and turned to look at the people on Yuan Jun's side. Mu Yangling took a deep breath, looked at Fei Bai, and Fei Bai also bit his lip. Seeing the princess looking over, he carefully handed over the quiver on his back, and carefully left with the guards behind him. Mu Yangling lowered his body, breathed lightly, knelt down on one knee, aimed the arrow at Wo Kuo, and after a while, the arrow moved slightly away, aimed at the person beside him, and shot out. Wo Kuo and the people around him heard the slight sound of breaking through the air, and subconsciously dodged to the side, but it was still too late. An arrow shot directly through General Wuyan's chest, his eyes widened in shock, and he fell backwards with a plop. Fall down, die with regret. Wo Kuo was terrified, and Wu Yan was standing next to him, with his shoulders close to his shoulders. He absolutely did not believe that the other party shot sideways, so it could only be that the other party did it on purpose. Qi Heiran, Wo Kuo gritted his teeth and asked word by word, "Is this your attitude in negotiating?" When Qi Heiran saw the arrow, he knew that Mu Yangling was coming. He resisted the urge to look back, and smiled with Wo Kuo, "This is not my king's subordinate, and only my brother can point to this person make me move. It seems that the king's letter was delivered in a timely manner." Wo Kuo narrowed his eyes and stared at Qi Heiran with an ugly face, as if he was weighing the truth of his words, but he soon had no time to think, because the man in the dark shot and killed the two guards in front of him again, 2 arrows with 1 arrow, which made Wo Kuo even more frightened. For the second time, he was so close to death. Perhaps because he died once, he became more afraid of death. Wo Kuo's soldiers shot arrows in the direction of the arrow just now, but they didn't hear a sound, so they could only run over to investigate, while his guards continued to block Wo Kuo. Qi Heiran straightened his body, looked at Wo Kuo with a half-smile on his face and said, "This king has never seen anyone who can catch him. Wo Kuo, she wants to kill you easily. Now it's up to you to make a decision. Are you going to change this hostage, or not?" As Qi Heiran's words fell, 2 arrows were shot from another direction again, directly piercing the necks of the 2 guards blocking Wo Kuo, and the arrow tips almost touched Wo Kuo's nose. Wo Kuo narrowed his eyes, and said slowly, "I'll change. Someone, go and bring Li Zhang." Mu Yangling left that place the moment the arrow shot out. Yuan Bing couldn't find her at all, but was attracted by the movement made by Fei Bai and others, and completely lost her trace. Mu Yangling climbed up the tree lightly, sat on the branch and watched the situation outside through the gaps in the leaves. Since Wo Kuo said she agreed to the exchange, she stopped shooting arrows. Li Zhang was quickly dragged out. He was covered in blood and was already dying. Seeing that he has become like this, the generals of the Yuan army felt a little complicated. They had either received favors from him, or had been promoted and cultivated by him. King Khan is a sworn brother, and he trusted King Khan before, but he was tortured by King Khan just because he was unwilling to use troops in alignment and betrayed his ancestors. Everyone didn't say it, but they all felt that Wo Kuo was too vicious and narrow-minded. Even if Li Zhang informed the people of Qi that they were about to use troops in alignment, there was no need to torture the other party like this and kill his family members. It's really inappropriate to do all the humiliation. Qi Heiran took a look at Li Zhang, making sure that he was still alive. With a wave of his hand, his own guard stepped forward to take Li Zhang and helped him onto the horse. Wo Kuo narrowed his eyes to look at him, and said, "Qi Heiran, it's your turn to release my Yuan general." With a wave of Qi Heiran's hand, Fang Xiaoyi pushed out one person, saying, "Please also ask the remaining 2 generals to give us a ride. Don't worry, we Daki will never break our promise." Everyone retreated slowly, and Wo Kuo's guards followed closely, and an arrow shot at their feet immediately. They couldn't help but stop, and instead of moving forward, they looked at a tree in the distance. Chi-Heiran couldn't help but tighten his hand holding the rein, and he whispered to Colonel Fang, "Defend." And Wo Kuo was also looking at the tree, and whispered to the guards around him, "Kill that man, at any cost." But the two generals are still in the hands of the Qi army. Wo Kuo looked at him coldly, the guard lowered his head, responded in a low voice, and retreated quietly. Mu Yangling had already left the tree, thanking her for her persistence in lightness kung fu and her love for flying. To Chi-Heiran, her lightness kung fu was like a three-legged cat, but it was more than enough to deal with these soldiers who could only run on the ground. Mu Yangling easily jumped over several trees, stopped on a branch of a tree and looked back, saw that Yuan Bing had been left behind, smiled slightly, and was about to leave when a crossbow arrow came through the air. Mu Yangling heard there was a sound of breaking through the air. Before I had time to look at the direction of the arrow, I hugged the trunk and turned around to hide behind the tree. The arrow shot directly through the trunk and almost touched her neck. Mu Yangling's eyes shrank, and there was a threat to her life. Keep her focused. She listened intently, but did not recognize the direction of the crossbow arrows. Mu Yangling thought of the broken arrow on Chi-Heiran's chest. Absolutely, the other party must not keep it. Such a person is a good assassin, keeping it is a disaster. Mu Yangling clenched the bow and crossbow in her hand, quickly observed the surrounding environment with her eyes, and jumped from behind the tree to another tree with a little step. A crossbow arrow quickly brushed her waist and shot to the ground, and Mu Yangling has also jumped onto the tree quickly and judged the general direction of the opponent. She kept walking, changed direction and continued to fly, and the crossbow arrows followed closely by her ears again. Mu Yangling quickly drew the arrow behind her back in the air, and when it landed on the tree, she quickly shot it with a bow. A figure jumped out of the bushes and dodged her arrow. Mu Yangling was surprised that someone could dodge her arrows, but the other party was also surprised. Ayang is a good archer and has always been Wo Kuo's trump card, which even Li Zhang didn't know. He can hit martial arts. The powerful Chi-Heiran didn't expect that he couldn't shoot the man in the dark with 3 arrows. On the contrary, Ayang ignited his fighting spirit, and felt sorry for this person. He thought for a while, and ran forward quickly, followed by Mu Yangling. Ayang is a sharp archer, and his hiding ability is not weaker than that of Mu Yangling, but he can only run. Although his speed is not slow, it is still inferior to Mu Yangling's lightness skill, so he was soon injured in his ribs. He broke off the arrow under his ribs, gritted his teeth and hid behind the tree, breathing slightly heavier. Mu Yangling breathed lightly and squatted on the tree. She didn't know where the other party was, but she knew he was here. Aling, Chi-Heiran ran over with Fei Bai on horseback. Hearing the sound, Ayang drew his full bow and shot at Chi-Heiran. Mu Yangling's expression changed, and he tore off Yuju from his neck and exhausted his internal strength. Throwing it in the direction Chi-Heiran came from, Yuju hit the arrow, which slowed down the arrow and tilted it. Chi-Heiran had already swung his sword out and cut off the flying arrow, while Mu Yangling threw Yuju at the same time. Also drew an arrow and shot towards Ayang. Ayang just ran 3 steps, and an arrow shot through his heart from behind him. He lowered his head in disbelief. He had clearly dodged just now. He looked back at Mu Yangling, who jumped off the branch, and was surprised that she turned out to be a woman. Mu Yangling looked into his eyes and said, "You are very powerful, but every time you dodge an arrow, you dodge 2 steps to the right. This is not a good habit, because your opponent will remember your habit." Ayang spit out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Chi-Heiran stepped forward with a slightly blue face and held Mu Yangling's hand. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1104. Chi-Heiran held Mu Yangling's hand, and his heart relaxed. As soon as the obsession that had been supporting him disappeared, he passed out. Mu Yangling's expression changed, and he hurriedly hugged him. Qi Heiran was shot in the left rib by a Yang's arrow. Mu Yangling took a closer look. The arrow pierced through the breastplate in his clothes and slashed half an inch to the left. She was not sure whether the arrow hit the heart. I have to go back to Beijing to see the imperial physician. Fei Bai's face was also pale, and he almost cried out, "Ma'am, the accompanying military doctors dare not pull out the arrows, we have to send the prince back to Zhongdu City as soon as possible." Mu Yangling picked up Qi Heiran, got on the horse and said, "Fei Bai, you and Fang Xiaoyi take someone back. Li Zhang's injury is not suitable for running around. Let the accompanying military doctor take care of him. I will take the prince back." Fei Bai hurriedly picked more than 20 guards for Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling was afraid that the arrow would move, so he didn't dare to make too much movement. Naturally, he didn't dare to put Qi Heiran on the horse's back, so he held him in his arms with one hand, and rode the horse with the other, and hurried back to Zhongdu City. Qi Ziyuan, Fan Zijin, and others had already known the news in advance, and had asked the imperial physician to wait. As soon as Mu Yangling arrived at the city gate, a carriage followed, and an imperial physician came up with a box to check his pulse, making sure that Qi Heiran was still alive, so he let go in one breath. Qi Heiran was sent to the Dajin Palace. Qi Ziyuan and Fan Zijin came out with bluish faces. After seeing Qi Heiran's injury, they asked with a cold light, how could he be injured? Qi Heiran was seldom injured in formal battles. He was fine when he escaped death, like entering Zhongdu City before, but this time he was injured, and it still hurt his vitals, which made them feel incredible. Mu Yangling said, "There is a sharp archer in the Yuan army. He is very powerful. Even I almost fell into his hands. Fortunately, Wokuo is not ruthless enough, otherwise." Wokuo didn't dare to provoke Qi Heiran, lest the Qi army kill 3 of his generals and make him lose the morale of the army. Otherwise, Qi Heiran would be very difficult to save when he negotiated terms with Wokuo face to face on horseback. Qi Ziyuan's expression turned ugly, and he asked, "Where's that person?" "Died." Qi Ziyuan breathed a sigh of relief, and turned to look at the imperial physician. The imperial physicians had already cut off Qi Heiran's clothes, and wiped off their sweat. They replied, "Your Majesty, I'm afraid that the Lord may have hurt his vitals. I dare not pull out the arrow at will, so I can only take it out with a knife. If it hurts the heart, I'm afraid, please forgive me, Your Majesty." Mu Yangling's expression changed, and he said, "It's impossible, he hasn't bled for the past 2 days, so it won't hurt his heart. He is protected by a heart guard. How could he hurt his heart? If you don't know how to heal, don't talk nonsense." Fan Zijin stared at them with red eyes. Qi Ziyuan's eyes were also slightly red, but seeing that Mu Yangling and Fan Zijin were so excited, he could only force himself to calm down, and said in a cold voice, "Just tell me what you need, and try your best to save King Rong. He is alive, Rong Hua. I will give you all the wealth and honor, but if he dies," Qi Ziyuan looked at them with a cold light, "I will not offend your family, but you must be buried with him." The imperial physicians knelt down one after another, kowtowed, and then discussed and prescribed a prescription. They need anesthetics, hemostatic drugs, and various life-saving precious medicinal materials. Doctors are not unfamiliar with surgery, but they are not very familiar with it, because surgery is only a small branch of Chinese medicine. They use medicine, acupuncture, and other methods to achieve the effect of curing diseases. Surgery can also be done, but it was the first time to do it on the heart. After all, not everyone has the ability of Hua Tuo. Mu Yangling was walking back and forth outside the house. At this moment, she regretted a little. How did she go to military school in her previous life instead of medical school? Qi Ziyuan was also in a hurry, but seeing Mu Yangling in a distressed figure, with blue eyes and wounds on his body, he hurriedly comforted him and said, "Aling, go and wash up first, and take care of the wounds on your body, maybe when you recover the imperial physicians rescued Heiran. Mu Yangling shook his head. No, I'll wait here, brother, I'm not worried if I leave, so I might as well wait here. Qi Ziyuan looked at the wound on her arm, then go to the side hall and ask the maid to give you some hemostatic medicine. I see that your wound is starting to bleed again. Fan Zijian didn't have Qi Ziyuan's good temper, and said angrily, if you don't go, when Heiran wakes up, your blood will be gone, so why don't we make you go? Mu Yangling was stunned, and suddenly said, yeah, blood, how can the imperial doctor just prepare the medicine to stop the bleeding, but also prepare the plasma, otherwise what should Heiran do if he loses too much blood and goes into shock? What? Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian looked at each other. Although they didn't understand Mu Yangling's words very well, they barely understood what he meant, and Qi frowned, you mean to prepare blood for Heiran? Heiran lost blood and used other people's blood, is it possible? But he is in a coma now, how can he drink it? Mu Yangling didn't have time to explain, so he quickly grabbed a drug boy who came out of it, and said, go find an imperial doctor and ask them if they can give the prince a blood transfusion. Both Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian felt that Mu Yangling was being stimulated to go crazy, but who knew that the imperial physician said to Mu Yangling seriously, Madam, there are 2 sets of blood transfusion equipment in Dakin Imperial Hospital, but you know, this blood transfusion is also risky. According to the medical books of the past dynasties, blood transfusions to patients with excessive blood loss have been successful, and some have deteriorated. Among them, blood relationship has the highest success rate, but there is also the possibility of failure. Once it fails, the prince will reject it. We are afraid that we will be helpless, and so far, we still don't know how to distinguish between fused blood and repelled blood. That is to say, they have the technology of blood transfusion, but they don't know that blood is divided into blood types, and they don't know how to distinguish blood types. Mu Yangling said, as long as you have blood transfusion tools, I can judge the blood type, I mean, I can tell whose blood is effective for the prince. The imperial doctor breathed a sigh of relief. As their chances of success increased a bit, he hurriedly turned around to tell his colleagues the good news, and sent someone to find the blood transfusion tools collected by Dajintai Hospital. Mu Yangling took Qi Heiran's blood and took serum from it. Knowing that the blood of close relatives was most likely to be of the same blood type, she directly took the blood of Qi Ziyuan and Fan Zijian. The minister beside Qi Ziyuan opened his mouth, wanting to object, but seeing Qi Ziyuan glance at him coldly, he could only keep his mouth shut. When the operation started inside, Mu Yangling was also confirmed here. Fortunately, Qi Ziyuan and Fan Zijian's blood types were the same as Qi Heiran's. Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the imperial doctors were afraid to draw Qi Ziyuan's blood, so she did it herself. Qi Ziyuan saw that although her movements were rusty, she clearly knew what to do next, and that weird feeling arose again. He is the most familiar with Aling's background and experience. It can be said that he almost watched her grow up. Except for the first 9 years, he knows everything about her experience, but she can always do things she shouldn't do. Qi Ziyuan had doubts, so he raised his head to look at her, saw her anxious face, wiped off the sweat and looked anxiously at the blood drawn from his hand. Qi Ziyuan suddenly felt relieved, even if she was different from others. It's enough for her to be devoted to Heiran. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1105. The imperial physicians carefully took out the arrow, seeing that the tip of the arrow was only about 1 grain of rice away from the heart. They all broke down in cold sweat, and their movements were even more gentle, for fear that a single instability would cause fatal injury to Qi Heiran. A group of people sweated profusely to suture the wound, applied medicine to stop the bleeding and disinfected it, and 2 imperial physicians kept checking Chi Heiran's pulse. If he found excessive blood loss or irregular heartbeat, he would immediately give Chi Heiran blood transfusion and needle injection. It wasn't until the imperial physicians confirmed that Chi Heiran was temporarily out of danger that Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief. The imperial doctors also breathed a sigh of relief, and whispered, "As long as the prince's wound does not become inflamed and the person does not have a fever in the past 2 days, then everything will be fine." The few people were very fortunate that the arrowhead was not poisonous, otherwise the point of the arrowhead was so close to the heart, they might have died before it was delivered. Mu Yangling was filthy all over, and he didn't dare to enter the ward. He just peeked in on his toes, and saw that although his complexion was pale, he had the vitality of a living person, and his heart felt a little at ease. At this moment, Mu Yangling couldn't help but rejoice that Chinese medicine is more powerful than she imagined. In fact, surgery in ancient medicine existed as early as 3,000 years ago, and the earliest systematic record is the ulcer doctor in Zhouli, which is mainly responsible for treating swelling, ulcers, knife wounds and fractures. Knife, scissors, and needle thread for surgical operations such as cutting and stitching. Since the invention of Maofei powder by Hua Tuo in the Eastern Han Dynasty, surgery in Chinese medicine has been developing continuously. When Hua Tuo dared to propose a craniotomy for Cao, although the current Chinese medicine is somewhat lost, in some aspects, the development is also very fast. At least at this time they have produced a blood transfusion device, otherwise Mu Yangling really doesn't know how to make this thing at this moment. But the imperial doctors of the imperial hospital still admired the princess, and sat in the outer room to please her and waited for her. Because they really want to know how she judges what kind of blood the prince can use. If she can learn this skill and pass it on to future generations, then more people can be treated in the future, and medicine will take a small step forward. So when Mu Yangling came out after bathing and changing clothes, when he was about to disinfect and went in to see Chi Heiran, he met a pair of glowing eyes. Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling understood what they meant after thinking about it for a while, and she said, "When the prince is completely out of danger, I will tell you what the imperial doctors want to know." Several imperial physicians breathed a sigh of relief, saluted Mu Yangling one after another, and then left 2 people on duty, and the rest went to eat and rest, and they had to change shifts later. Qi Ziyuan and Fan Zijin had a lot of blood drawn just now, and now they are lying on the bed to rest their minds. The 2 of them have been busy and worried for the past few days. After so much blood was drawn all at once, their heads felt a little dizzy, but they couldn't fall asleep lying on the bed. "If you can't sleep, you can only chat." Fan Zijin asked in a low voice, "Big cousin, where do you think Aling knew about this? Even the imperial physicians don't know," and, Fan Zijin paused, he continued, "I used to teach the defense of the Heiran camp when Aling taught. I'm curious, who taught her assassination skills? It's like she used to do this, but she was only 9 years old at that time." Qi Ziyuan closed his eyes and said, "Some people are very talented. As long as they learn a little, they can learn a certain skill by themselves, just like Hao Ran, who has learned so many martial arts, and in the end he has his own indistinctly. In a few years, maybe he will be able to create his own kung fu. This is talent." Fan Zijin curled his lips, "Big cousin, I'm not Heiran, you don't have to fool me like that. If you say that Aling learned this without being taught, I wouldn't believe it even if I was killed. She has been hunting in the forest since she was a child. Isn't it normal for her to learn to assassinate and hunt without a teacher, and then introduce defensive strategies?" Since Qi Ziyuan had made up his mind not to pursue it, he naturally excused her. As for the blood transfusion, even the imperial physician doesn't know how to tell the difference. Not only can she tell the difference, but she also definitely says that the blood type is different. To distinguish the blood type, who taught her the word blood type, Fan Zijin said seriously, "Daddy, cousin, not only we have heard this, but the imperial physicians have also heard it. They won't think too much at this moment, but it's inevitable that they'll be suspicious when they think about it later. Chi Xiaoyuan reached out and patted him on the shoulder, and said with a smile, "You are too worried, what can they doubt? Besides us, who else knows Aling's life so clearly? It is Mushi. Our daughter's experience is not clear to us, and we don't need to say it clearly, just reveal a little bit, saying that she has obtained ancient books, or has seen someone teach her this skill, and it's over. If the three of us don't say it, who knows this true or not? Aling has supernatural powers, and he appeared from time to time in the Northland, and he followed Heiran to fight enemies on the battlefield, and went to the front line to save me, but you see, more than 10 years have passed, and the people in this world are still most of them don't hear her reputation, why?" Fan Zijin was silent for a moment, then said, "Because we didn't promote it." "That's right, virtuous fame, prestige, all kinds of fame need to be publicized, and we deliberately ignore it, so naturally no one will be suspicious. After today, you ask someone to publicize the fact that she has supernatural powers, and just cover it up." Chi Xiaoyuan said flatly, "Mu Shi and his youngest son are far stronger than ordinary people. It is not surprising that Aling has the blood of the Mu family and possesses supernatural power. Using one thing to cover up another unreasonable thing about her is the best way Chi Xiaoyuan can think of to protect her and Heiran." Knowing Chi Xiaoyuan's attitude, Fan Zijin also felt relieved, and was about to fall asleep in a drowsy state, when he heard the people around him continue, "But I have to remind her about this again, so that she can be more cautious in the future. You see, it's up to you, say, or wait until Heiran wakes up and let the husband and wife talk about it." Fan Zijin was weak, and his guard was at the lowest level at this time. He pouted displeasedly, "Why do we have to talk to her, can't you?" Chi Xiaoyuan chuckled softly, "You three grow up together, and it's better. If you can't wait for Heiran to wake up, it's best for you to tell her. If I talk to her about it, I'm afraid I'll scare her." Fan Zijin turned over and muttered in a daze, "It's no wonder that that stupid and bold person will be scared," but he didn't refuse the job, knowing, "Let's talk about it when the master is refreshed." The two cousins fell asleep drowsily, but Mu Yangling watched over Chi Heiran with his eyes wide open, testing the temperature on his forehead from time to time. When Xiao Xiang rushed in, he saw that his father was lying on the bed with a pale face, and his concubine was sitting with a pale face. When he was about to rush up, he was stared at by Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling lowered his voice and said, "Go out to take a shower, change into clean clothes and disinfect them before coming in." Little Xiang hesitated for a moment, and Mu Yangling comforted him softly, "Your father is fine, the arrow has been taken out." Little Bear then turned and went out. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1106. Xiao Xiang ignored everyone with an angry face, and everyone kept his father's injury such a serious matter from him. Chi Xiaoyuan saw that the child was even mad at him, so he hurriedly sent him all the good things he had copied from the Dajin Palace, and let him choose, while avoiding him, for fear that the fire would burn himself. He didn't even go to see Chi Heiran. I deliberately picked the time to stagger. Chi Heiran woke up at night, drank some ginseng soup and continued to sleep. He started to have a fever in the early morning, and Mu Yangling was so anxious that he could only cool him down physically. He is very weak now and cannot bear the pain of tiger and wolf at all. Medicine. Perhaps because of his strong body, his fever gradually subsided not long after the sun came out. Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief, and while wiping his body with a dry towel, he changed into a dry undershirt for him. Chi Heiran was comfortable, but she was sweating all over from exhaustion. Xiao Xiang was supposed to help, but because of his non-stop hands and feet, Mu Yangling could only drive people out to make medicine and do it himself. Little Xiang came in with the medicine, saw his mother's face was not good, so he hurriedly said, "Mom, you go to rest first, I will watch Dad." You haven't slept all night, you go, I'll see your father again. Little Xiong put down the medicine, pulled his mother up, sat down on the stool beside the bed, and said, Mom, I can take care of Dad. Really, you were also injured and worked hard for several days. If you don't rest, you will collapse before your father recovers. In order to show that he can do it, the little bear motioned to give medicine to his father on the spot. Mu Yangling saw that Qi Heiran was subconsciously swallowing the medicine with his eyes closed, and Xiao Xiong's movements were still gentle, so he nodded in agreement, but she didn't leave, and fell asleep on the soft couch outside. When Qi Heiran opened his eyes and woke up, what he saw was his son leaning against the bed. Qi Heiran turned his eyes and didn't see Mu Yangling. He wanted to sit up when he was worried, and the little bear woke up when he moved. Can't move around. Only then did Qi Heiran lie down again in peace. Little Xiong pouted and said, Why are you all like this? No one asked me. Qi Heiran slightly closed his eyes and asked weakly, What's wrong with you? Little Xiong immediately complained, Uncle Huang and the others have kept the matter of your injury from me. If you hadn't been rescued, would they have kept it from me? Bullshit, if Grandpa isn't rescued, why would he keep it from you? Just let you attend Grandpa's funeral. Little Xiong looked at him sadly, then I won't even see your last side. Qi Heiran really wanted to stuff his son into a pillow, but he was so weak now that he couldn't do anything about it, so he could only shout weakly, Why are you so stupid? Aren't your father and I fine now? And you are too stupid thinking about it. When I was your age, your Uncle Huang and his army couldn't hide from me at all. They kept it from you, and you wouldn't find out by yourself? Besides, if you didn't act immaturely, will your Uncle Huang and Uncle Fan hide it from you because they are worried about your nonsense? Qi Heiran was very complacent when he said this, and said proudly, I was only 12 years old when your father was king, and your uncle didn't hide anything from me. Do you know why? Bear shook his head. Because your father is reliable, so you should learn from it in the future and act more prudently, so that others can trust you, and naturally they won't hide it from you if something goes wrong. Hearing that his younger brother woke up, Qi Ziyuan, who hurried to visit, bumped into Fan Zijian at the door. Hearing these remarks as soon as he entered the door, the two of them could only twitch the corners of their mouths and open the curtain to enter the door. Qi Heiran felt guilty for a moment when he saw the two people coming in, but he thought they didn't hear anything when he saw that their faces were the same. He was relieved, and quickly changed the subject. Qi Ziyuan was amused in his heart, but he didn't expose him, and obediently changed the topic, but Fan Zijian glanced at him with a half-smile, reluctantly saving him face. But Xiao Xiong seems to have been inspired. The most direct impact is that he no longer laughs and laughs with others. He keeps a straight face all day long, and he almost writes the words I am very stable on his face. Mu Yangling didn't know what was going on, and asked Qi Heiran curiously, What's the matter with Little Bear these 2 days? He doesn't seem to be able to smile anymore. I made his favorite braised lion head and he was also expressionless, obviously eating it all. There was no smile on my face after the plate was over. Qi Heiran buried his head in drinking the medicine. How could he dare to say that he was bragging? But he was also very angry in his heart. He had to be prudent in his actions. Did this kid think that being prudent and not joking is prudence? Qi Ziyuan and Fan Zijian, who knew the inside story well, felt happy, took a sip of the tea on the table, and covered up the smiles on the corners of their mouths. Qi Ziyuan suppressed his smile, put down his teacup for a while and said, UN army has already retreated to the north of Dating Mansion. General Mu said that Wokuo had people set up a defense line there. If we continue to pursue, we are afraid that the army will go deep alone, so I think, in the future, the Qi and UN countries will temporarily use Dating Mansion as the boundary. When it came to business, Qi Heiran raised his head and drank the bitter medicine, wiped his mouth and said, Then who is going to guard the Dating Mansion? That will directly face the UN army, and the conflict between the two sides may continue in the future. I prefer General Yuan. He is loyal to Daki and understands the situation in day one. I want General Mu to guard Taiyuan Mansion to prevent Zixia. What do you think? Chi Heiran nodded slightly. It's just that General Yuan is getting old. How many years can he be guarded? Brother has to arrange the guard of Dating Mansion as soon as possible. Chi Ziyuan nodded to express his understanding. He got up and said, I will take care of these things. You should have a good rest. Next month we will return to the imperial court. Try to recover from your injuries. Fan Zijin also nodded with him. He had just taken over the financial affairs of Dajin, and he had to count the gold, silver, and jewelry in the warehouse, and he was also very busy. There were only the couple left in the room. Chi Heiran went to grab Mu Yangling's hand. He had just woken up for 4 or 5 days, but his wound was in severe pain. Some chores, and I have never had a quiet time with Mu Yangling. Chi Heiran squeezed Mu Yangling's hand and asked, have you recovered from your injuries? It's almost there. I was slightly injured. It's just the arrow scraping through it. It's not serious. Chi Heiran rolled up her sleeves to look, and saw that the red scars were almost healed, but it was enough for Chi Heiran to feel distressed. After 3 months of expedition, Aling was not injured at all, but he was injured seeing the war was over. Chi Heiran felt guilty, touched her hand and said in a low voice, it's my fault, I'm too arrogant. Mu Yangling shook his head, leaned slightly on his right shoulder and said, it's amazing that you can carry him with 80,000 people with 3,000 people, and not only you, but also the elder brother, Zijin, and I didn't expect Wo Kuo to be able to carry him this round, but he was unlucky, who made him underestimate your ability. Chi Heiran chuckled and said, it's because he ignored you. If he knew that there is such a capable princess beside me, he wouldn't talk so much nonsense with me. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1107. Maybe it's the reason why he just came back from the Ghost Gate. Mu Yangling is very clingy to Chi Heiran. He would come over to take a look within half an hour on average. It happened that Chi Heiran was sick and couldn't get out of bed. He was very bored. He looked at her helplessly. Seeing them like this, Chi Xiu didn't let Mu Yangling work at all, and just accompanied Chi Heiran to recover from his illness. In this way, all financial matters were piled on Fan Zijin. Because of the transportation of grain and grass, the Ministry of Households has accompanying officials, and there are also many logistics officials in the Ministry of War. However, in the face of the accounts and most of the property left over from the entire Dakin, there are still not enough manpower. But Da Qi would not trust the officials of the Kingdom of Jin, so Fan Zijin was so busy that he finally caught Xiao Xiong and helped him supervise some things. For example, the gold, silver, and jewelry that the Golden Royal family failed to take away. The tax levied by the Golden Court on the people is the highest among several countries, and the Golden Royal family has always been extravagant. Not only did they flee this time in a hurry, but conditions did not allow them to take too many things with them. There are still many left in the palace, not to mention the things in the palace, even the warehouses are full. He is much richer than when Shi Ziyuan went to Linan to take over the Great Zhou Palace. If the money passes through the hands of the officials at the bottom, even if the officials in Daki are governed by Qingming, it may be reduced by 10 to 20% after the statistics, and another 10 to 20% will be reduced after it is transported to the capital. I'm afraid I don't have 60% of the ones in my hand. Just north of Jingzhou Mansion and south of Dating Mansion belong to the newly recovered Lost Land. Due to the ravages of war, people's lives are very difficult. Anyway, they have to provide disaster relief. It's better to take the seeds that will be used next year. Farm tools, cattle, etc. are also prepared for the common people as much as possible. There is not much food in the Dajin granary, but it doesn't matter, they have gold, silver, and jewelry. I believe many merchants are willing to transport things to Zhongdu City for exchange. In this way, 1/3 of the treasure left by Dajin will go, and then the compensation will be given to the soldiers who died in battle, and some subsidies will go to the wounded soldiers. Moreover, since Dazhu fled south, the army has never been disarmed. Most of the soldiers in the army, once you join the army, you don't end until you die or become disabled. This time, Qi Ziyuan simply waved his hand. Anyone below the small flag, over 40 years old, and anyone who is willing to retire and return to his hometown can receive a large amount of military expenses to return to his hometown. The local county government must give him the Yanjai land he deserves. As soon as this policy came out, half of the remaining treasure went away, and in the end less than a quarter remained. If Qi Ziyuan gave some rewards to the soldiers below, there wouldn't be many left, but even if there weren't many left, there would still be around 10 cars. Xiao Xiang is going to supervise and register the records one by one to ensure that everything is used in practice. It is precisely because of this that Qi Ziyuan and Fan Zijin are so busy, because almost an official of the imperial court can handle this matter, but there are only about 20 officials accompanying them, and many things need to be done by themselves, so although the war is over, they but busier than before. In the entire Zhongdu city, Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling might be the most idle. Because the Jin people in Zhongdu city were eager to pack their bags and leave, the Daqi court did not stop them. As long as they had no criminal records, they would all be released, and those who committed various crimes such as murder and fraud will be counted from the beginning of this year, regardless of previous crimes. No matter how the Jinting court judges, it shall be invalidated, and the law shall prevail. So the common people are also busy, and the dignitaries above are even busier. Those who have never done any serious crimes are rushing to find a way to leave with the money. And after Qi Ziyuan entered the central capital, new government orders came out almost every day, and the common people crowded in front of the notice wall of the yamen, cheering excitedly or running in panic, so they were very busy. As an idler, Qi Heiran felt that he should not be too independent, so he tossed Mu Yangling desperately. One moment he said he wanted to eat the soup she made himself, another moment he asked her to make clothes for him, and the next day he disliked her soup too salty and asked her to cook it. Porridge, while picking on her poor clothes? At the beginning, Fan Zijin was worried about his wounds and visited him twice. Seeing that he was so capable of tossing around, he turned around and left, but he never happened again. At most, he would ask Yanmo when he thought of it. Qi Ziyuan was even more straightforward, allocating the side of the Golden Palace to the couple to toss about, and when he remembered, he asked Uniquan, and when he learned that Qi Heiran was recovering gradually, he stopped visiting him. The days came to the end of July just like that. When the hot summer transitioned to the breezy autumn, Qi Ziyuan helped the victims who should be relieved, registered the refugees and turned them into good citizens, and divided the fields that should be divided. Now, the previous 400,000 troops have been reduced to 320,000, and they have also arrived at the place where they are stationed. In the entire Zhongdu city, there are only 10,000 elite soldiers and their team left. So, Qi Ziyuan was satisfied and ordered the teacher to return to the court. Only then did the cousins think of the couple who were still recuperating somewhere in the palace, and they became worried. The boy was seriously injured. Although he had been recuperating for more than a month, he didn't know if he would be able to go on the road. I went to visit him, and felt a little guilty. Thinking of this, the two hurriedly went to the palace to visit. As soon as he entered the main hall, he heard Qi Heiran's angry shout, "Turn, turn, step on leaves in the air, oops, why are you so stupid, you can't vent your breath when you jump into the air, you have to increase your internal strength." Qi Heiran was standing in the corridor with one hand on his waist teaching Mu Yangling lightness kung fu. Seeing that she still couldn't speed up after jumping for a long time, he wished he could demonstrate it himself. Mu Yangling jumped down from the tree, wiped off his sweat, and said complacently, I think my Qinggong is good enough, I can turn the entire palace around in one breath. Qi Heiran curled his lips, then can you cross me Iaji and get out? Applause for the lightness kung fu of this three-legged cat. Mu Yangling refused to accept it. I'm not going to compare with you, you have strong internal strength, what can I do if I can't get up in the air? I think I'm already very powerful. That's why I said you have no ambition. You have been practicing martial arts since you were 9 years old. It has been 20 years, and the result is still the lightness kung fu of a three-legged cat. Why are you so stupid? I don't know if Beizu is like you. Seeing that the couple was about to quarrel again, a court lady hurriedly brought up 2 cups of tea. My lord, my concubine, you must be tired after practicing all morning, let's have some tea and rest. Mu Yangling took the tea, but took Qi Heiran's cup too, and said, didn't I tell you that the prince can't drink tea now, but can only drink boiled water? He needs to take medicine. The maid hurriedly responded, but she peeked at Qi Heiran. Although Qi Heiran felt that the boiled water was tasteless, he still curled his lips and waved to the court lady to let her back down. The palace maid heaved a sigh of relief, stepped back quickly, and saw the emperor at the door. As soon as she turned around, knelt down to pay his respects with a plop. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1108. Qi Ziyuan looked at his younger brother carefully, and asked seriously, are you getting fat? The cheeks that had been thinned due to the war and injury were bulging at this time, and he had gained weight 2 or 3 times at a glance, almost approaching the time when he was still carrying baby fat. Qi Heiran looked at the obviously thin elder brother and cousin, coughed lightly, and complained guiltily, "A Ling always feeds me soup, and doesn't let me get out of bed, so I'm so fat." Fan Zijin looked him up and down for a moment, then said with a sour air, "I thought you were still lying on the bed and couldn't get out of bed, but I didn't expect you to be so lively." Mu Yangling said something fair, it's been almost 50 days, and his wound healed quickly. The imperial doctor said that as long as he doesn't exercise vigorously, he will be fine. Qi Heiran nodded again and again, that's why Aling didn't even ask me to come out of the palace gate. When Qi Heiran said this, he was really aggrieved. He was never a person who could sit still. If it wasn't for Mu Yangling by his side, he would have gone outside a long time ago. Although the two of them were a little jealous of his leisure, they were also really happy that he was recovering well. Qi Ziyuan recruited the imperial physician, and learned that Qi Heiran would be fine as long as he drove carefully, and he had seen Qi Heiran's vigor with his own eyes, so he gave the order to set off with peace of mind. Qi Ziyuan returned directly to Luan capital, but Qi Heiran's family separated from them in Jinan Mansion and went to Jingzhou Mansion by water. Mu Yangling followed Qi Heiran to fight. One of them was to go home and have a look, but at that time they were in charge of the middle battlefield and had no chance to go back. At this time, Qi Heiran was injured, and he needed to recuperate when he returned to the capital. Qi Ziyuan gave him 2 imperial physicians, put him on vacation. Little Xiong had never been to his grandfather's house before, and he wanted to follow along with great interest. Therefore, the family took a boat from Jinan to the west, and then changed to a carriage in the middle. It took nearly half a month to arrive at Jingzhou Mansion. Qi Heiran opened the curtain, looked up at the city wall of Jingzhou Mansion, turned his head and said to Mu Yangling, "We are finally back." Looking at the majestic city wall in front of him, Mu Yangling felt a little complicated, and said after a while, "We are going to settle down in Jingzhou Mansion tonight. Where are we going to live?" "Go directly to live in the general's mansion," Qi Heiran said. "Brother's mansion has been kept, and someone has been sent to clean it. We will stay there for 1 night, and then go to Xingzhou Mansion via Hanshong Mansion tomorrow." Mu Yangling looked at his chest, Does your injury matter, or should we stay in Jingzhou Mansion for 2 more days? Let's forget it, Qi Heiran said disgustedly. Master's wound has healed, and you told the imperial doctor that you need to take medicine for the injury. Master usually takes enough medicine. If you really want to stop, you can't stop, take more medicine. In fact, Qi Heiran really thinks he is better, but the imperial doctors are cautious, and Mu Yangling also thinks that it is dangerous for him to almost hurt his heart, so he has not stopped taking medicine during this period, although now it has changed from once in the morning and evening to a day. It was also difficult for him to accept the medicine once. Fortunately, we are about to arrive at Xingzhou Mansion. Qi Heiran salivates sharply when he thinks of his mother-in-law's cooking skills. He can't wait to say, let's go, hurry up and rest. We will return to Xingzhou Mansion tomorrow morning. Little Xiang was guarding the carriage on horseback, looking around curiously. It was his first time to Jingzhou Mansion. He heard from his father that he used to be a little general here, and his parents were still married here, so he looked around curiously. The Jingzhou Mansion was full of joy. First, Daqi won a big victory and took back all the land occupied by Dajin. Their Jingzhou Mansion is no longer a border, and the people will finally be free from it. The fate of being beaten into the grass valley, the common people often cry with joy when they think of it, and they can't wait to set off cannons to celebrate. Secondly, although there are occasional natural disasters this year, the crops in the field are still doing well, and now the autumn harvest has begun, so everyone has the joy of a good harvest on their faces. The people on the street had happy smiles on their faces, a harmonious look, and Little Bear couldn't help but smile when he saw it, so when he walked around the street and saw the commotion in front of him, he couldn't help but look twice more, and at the same time stood upright. Ears. I'm telling you, I look up to you when I see your restaurant, and I don't open my eyes to see who I am. I guard the hidden residence for the emperor. Be careful that I will hand over a memorial to your family. Little Bear's expression changed, and he reined in the horse. The driver next to him hurriedly stopped the carriage when he saw it, and a group of 5 carriages stopped in the middle of the road. Carriage. In the car, Qi Heiran, who was a little drowsy from taking the medicine, woke up when he was shaken. He opened his hazy eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" Mu Yangling also vaguely heard a little movement, patted his hand and said, "It's okay, Little Bear wants to watch the fun." Mu Yangling comforted him, and saw that he had fallen asleep again, so he opened the curtain and said to Little Bear, "Take Xylo and 2 guards to take a look, and your father and I will go back first." Little Xiang was gearing up, and when he heard the words he nodded repeatedly. Mu Yangling pointed him up and said, "It's best to let the store owner go to the yamen to sue him, and see how the magistrate judges." Little Xiang understood as soon as he rolled his eyes, and said happily, "Mom, I understand how to do it." Little Xiang stopped riding at all, and got off the horse and pulled the small building into the crowd. The 2 accompanying guards paled in shock, and hurriedly pushed aside the crowd to follow. The shopkeepers surrounded in the middle were kneeling on the ground begging for someone dressed in silk and satin. Before Xiao Xiang came, he had heard from his parents that Uncle Huang asked Zhu Quan's family to stay in the hidden mansion. Zhu Quan and the chief manager of the family, Zhu Liang, were cousins. It is said that his father, Zhu De, and chief manager Zhu, who is in charge of the imperial uncle's internal library, are brothers. They were the companions left by the grandmother who passed away to the imperial uncle and his father. They are still loyal. He narrowed his eyes to look at this. The person in silk and satin didn't find any similarities between him and Zhu Liang, so he whispered to the people watching, "Who is this man? He is so domineering." The person he asked glanced at Xiao Xiang, seeing that he was young, he also lowered his voice and said, "You are from outside. No wonder you don't know, that is Wang Ping, the son-in-law of Chief Executive Zhu. He used to have mud legs just like us." As a result, the emperor became the emperor, and because he married the daughter of Chief Executive Zhu, he also became famous. I wish the chief manager is the manager of the emperor's internal treasury. Hey, what if that one pays off? It's the one who guards the hidden mansion in our city. The emperor trusts them and entrusts the hidden mansion to their family to take care of it. But they rob people's wealth like this. Isn't it bad for the emperor's reputation, and the local government doesn't care? Take care? How do you manage this? The sky is high and the emperor is far away. How could the emperor know, and the brother of the chief executive Zhu is the emperor's chief executive, and his nephew is also the chief executive of King. He can be called the magistrate with a letter who dares to care if the adults lose their heads. When Xiaoxiang saw that his family was also picked up, his face flushed with anger. The people next to him thought he was arguing when they saw it, so they patted him on the shoulder and said, "Little brother, don't be too angry. In fact, this old man of the emperor is considered good. Although Zujia is a bit too much, it is better than that compared with the corrupt officials in the previous dynasty, it is much better, so don't make trouble on the spur of the moment. Little Bear is even angrier, isn't it better if it's not worse than before?" He gave Wang Ping in the crowd a cold look, and gave Xiaolo a wink, telling him to go forward and persuade the store owner to sue Wang Ping in the yamen. At this time, Mu Yangling's carriage had just arrived in front of the general's mansion. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1109. Afraid of trouble, the group of people tried to keep a low profile on the road, and stayed in hotels at ordinary times, rarely bothering local officials. This time was no exception. Qi Heiran didn't notify the officials of the Jingzhou mansion, and naturally he didn't notify the people who stayed behind in the hidden mansion, so no one came out to greet them. The chief guard knocked on the door. He thought it would take a long time. After all, only one room was guarded in the Jian mansion. The general's mansion is so big and the owner is not at home. There might not be someone guarding the door all the time. But I didn't expect that as soon as he knocked on the door opened immediately. A man who looked like a servant looked at the chief guard and asked, "What are you doing? You want someone to enter through the corner door. This is the door." The chief guard smiled gently and said, "The Lord has returned to the mansion, you go and ask Zuda to come out to greet him." The servant was taken aback, first glanced at the head guard, then looked at the 5 large carriages in front of the door, hurriedly opened the door, saluted and said, "You will go later, the little one will go here." Let another servant inside the door greet them, and ran towards the mansion like flying. Zuda was sitting on the master chair drinking tea, and said slowly with his son Zhu Quan, "The news from Kaifeng said that someone saw the prince and concubine over there. You should restrain yourself recently. If the prince didn't go back to Beijing with the emperor, I'm afraid they will bypass Jingzhou mansion." Zhu Quan frowned and said, "Why did the prince come to Jingzhou mansion when he has nothing to do? What do you know, the concubine's natal family is in Xingzhou mansion, and you can't pass through our Jingzhou mansion from the north to Xingzhou mansion." Zhu decided, "The prince is good at everything, but he loves the concubine too much, maybe they will come here well, so you all have to be more honest recently, the prince is very hot-tempered, and he can't look down on these things the most." Zhu Quan could only bow his head in response. "Master's Hifu has taken good care of us and sent someone to inform him." Zhu Quan refused to accept it and said, "What kind of caring is he? The last time his son took a fancy to the piece of land in Dongcheng, he just refused to let go. I sent someone to buy it from those mud legs, but he even secretly sent a yamen servant to stop it, thinking that after pushing the yamen servant to come forward, I don't know that he is behind the scenes." Zuda frowned and scolded, "Idiot, do you think I'm selling the prefect? I'm protecting you. We are grasshoppers on the same rope. If something happens to him, it will definitely implicate us. This prefect, although there are many disadvantages, everyone is familiar with it after all, and it is better than a newcomer who does not know the details, and if the prince and princess come to Jingzhou Mansion this time, it may be a chance for us. People all over the world know that the prince hates corrupt and cruel officials, and the officials in the officialdom are especially afraid. The magistrate has turned a blind eye to allowing them to make trouble all these years. Just as Zuda was about to teach his son, a servant rushed over and shouted, "Chief, chief!" Zhu frowned. Zhu Quan scolded, "What are you shouting about? This is the general's mansion, what's the proper way to make such noise?" The servant took a breath, pointed to the outside and shouted, "Chairman, uncle, a guard, and 5 carriages came outside, saying that the prince is back." Zuda's complexion changed drastically, and the teacup fell to the ground with a flick. He thought that the prince might come to Jingzhou Mansion, but he never thought that he would arrive today. Zuda took a look at the clothes on himself and his son, and quickly got up and said, "Quickly ask someone to clean up this place, and you should go back and change quickly. Take off all the ornaments on your body." Qi Heiran lay in Mu Yangling's arms and slept soundly, while the accompanying guards were still sitting on the horse, motionless. The window of a carriage in the back was pushed open a little, an imperial doctor poked his head out to have a look, then turned his head and whispered to his colleagues, "It's been 3/4 of an hour, it seems that something is going to happen in Jingzhou Mansion." The other imperial doctor still closed his eyes slightly, and said in a low voice, "Don't worry about it, we just need to take care of the prince's health, even if something happens to them, they will have to blame themselves. We have passed through so many towns all the way west from Jinan Mansion, although there are grievances. But no one can be so arrogant. This is a servant of the royal family, he is too courageous." The Boldzid father and son ran out of the mansion in a hurry, wearing grey cloth clothes, knelt down in front of the carriage, begged for sin, and said, "My lord, forgive me, I don't know the lord's return to the mansion, and I am far away to welcome you. It's the fault of the little ones." Qi Heiran opened his eyelids, and asked with difficulty, "What's wrong?" Mu Yangling patted him and said with a smile, "It's okay, the servants are a little surprised, it's okay if you wake up, we go to sleep in the mansion." Qi Heiran quietly got up when he heard the words, and said after a while, "Let the imperial doctor change the prescription, it's too uncomfortable to feel drowsy every time after taking the medicine." Mu Yangling said with a smile, "Sleeping is also a way for the body to regulate." The couple talked for a while, and left Zuda and Zhu Quan there. The father and son hadn't knelt like this for a long time, and they were on the verge of falling. Mu Yangling also poured Qi Heiran a glass of water, and then said through the curtain, "Get up, we will stay for one night, and leave early in the morning. You ask someone to clean up the prince's yard, and the imperial doctors live in it in the guest courtyard, the guards live in the front courtyard." Zuda and Zhu Quan breathed a sigh of relief, they only stayed for one day, it was great, they quickly helped them get up and lead the way. The servant removed the threshold to allow the carriage to enter. After entering the mansion, Mu Yangling helped Qi Heiran get out of the car. The two nodded slightly satisfied when they saw that the mansion was clean. Glancing at the grey cloth clothes on the two of them, Mu Yangling didn't say anything, and helped Qi Heiran go to the backyard. From a distance, he saw 2 maids helping a young woman in gold and silver out of the garden in a hurry to leave. A drop of cold sweat slid down Zuquan's forehead. That was his concubine. Didn't they have been told to go back to the room and not allowed to go out? Why are you still in the garden? Mu Yangling didn't seem to notice, and straightly supported Qi Heiran back to their yard. Their room was already covered with dust. Mu Yangling wiped his fingers on the table, and the fingertips were covered with dust. Now even Zuda's forehead was covered with cold sweat. Mu Yangling still said with a smile, "Have someone bring water to clean the room. We have quilts with us, just ask them to bring them in and make them ready. Bring me a pot of hot water." Qi Heiran's face was ugly, and after everyone retreated, he said to Mu Yangling, "Let's go to the inn." No, Mu Yangling said, going to the inn is not as comfortable as being at home. Chi Heiran took a deep breath, sat for a while with a livid face, and said, both Chief Zhu and Zhu Liang are quite capable, and they haven't lost their eyes in that bustling place in the capital. Everyone has their own destiny, so don't worry about this matter, we just stay for one night and then leave. Don't forget, we are here to accompany me to visit my relatives and play along the way. Chi Heiran didn't believe it. You just let go of it? Mu Yangling sneered, I'll have to work hard to take care of it. Since there are so many smart people in this world, someone will take care of these things for us. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1110. Zhu was sweating profusely and exited the courtyard. He knew that the prince and concubine must have become suspicious. If they asked a question, he could still defend himself. What disturbed him most was that the prince and concubine didn't ask a word. Father, what should we do? The prince must have seen Jiao Niang just now. Zhu Quan was so panicked that his face turned blue. Shut up, I asked you to restrain your concubines, but you didn't listen. Now that you have the time, why don't you drive them out quickly? At the beginning, the emperor only left our family to guard the hidden mansion. Even if it was imported, there were not so many people. Yes, let them go through the back door, let's go. Zhu De now just wants to make some remedies, so as not to let the prince know more. As for the matter of scheming the magistrate, he has temporarily thrown it aside. But the guards who followed Chi Heiran had inspected the entire general's mansion when they entered the mansion, and after confirming that there were no potential safety hazards, they closed the extra doors, leaving only 2 corner doors to pass through, and the keys were in the hands of the guards. Zhu was so angry that he was half dead, but this was for the safety of the prince, and these guards had checked everywhere, and they must have an impression of the number of people in the mansion. Before he could come up with a countermeasure, an aggressive young man led the 3 of them kicked the door into the mansion. He was about to lose his temper, when he looked up and saw the boy's appearance. His anger was blocked in his chest and he couldn't express it. This tiger-headed man, when he was angry, looked like a 12 or 13-year-old prince, and he could understand his identity at a glance. Zhu De knelt down on the ground again. Master? My little one, please greet him. Xiao Xiong waved his hand, saw that he was wearing grey clothes. He skipped him and looked at the well-dressed servant beside him, and asked, I ask you, where is the chief manager of the house? The servant secretly raised his eyes to look at Zhu De. Zhu De couldn't help wiping his sweat, and said in a low voice, Master Hui, the younger one is the chief manager. You, Little Bear circled around him twice in doubt, tore off his coat, saw the inner coat made of fine silk, and immediately sneered, Master, why is your son-in-law here? You are so arrogant on the outside, but you are so simple. It turns out that the inside and the outside are not the same. Come here, arrest him for me. Forgive me, my son, it's all old servants who have lost their minds, and shouldn't accept the filial piety from the subordinates. Your lord, don't remember the faults of villains. For the sake of serving the emperor and the prince, you should spare the servants. Zhu Quan's eyes moved, and he knelt down and kowtowed again and again. The little ones are guilty, please forgive us this time for the sake of the emperor and the prince, we will never dare again in the future. Little Xiong was not coerced by them, and said with a sneer, not to mention my uncle, but my father hates people like you the most. There are many people who have served my uncle and father in this world. Killing people and setting fires doesn't require subjugation? Don't say that you are just servants of my chief family. Even if you are good citizens, no one dares to use my chief family's power to do such illegal things. Take it directly to the government office and let the magistrate handle it according to the law. Xiaolo hurriedly took 2 guards to tie up everyone. I wish the whole family would enjoy it, and they completely regarded themselves as the masters of the hidden mansion. Except for the main courtyard, the study room and the 2 courtyards where Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin lived in the past, All the other rooms in the general's mansion were used rationally. I wish that even a servant would have 2 concubines, not to mention Zhu Quan, plus the servants bought to serve them, including their offspring born in October, there would be 48 people. Almost catching up with a middle-class wealthy household. When Chi Heiran saw his son coming back, he tied him up. His eyes were shining brightly. Although he didn't speak, he was obviously very happy. Knowing that his son was going to send him to the government office, he waved his hand and said, "Don't send him to the government office, to avoid embarrassment, deal with it privately. If you don't kill him, go to the village to do coolies." No, the mother and son objected together. Mu Yangling said, "It's better to lose this face than not to lose it." Little Xiang also nodded repeatedly, "Father, you and Uncle Huang have so many servants, how can you control so much, maybe who will take advantage of your power and influence, so you should take this opportunity to express your attitude. Let the officials all over the world know that even if they are servants of the royal family, they should do whatever they want if they break the law. We deal with it privately." Although they have been punished, the officials all over the world still feel that we intend to protect the servants at home. Mu Yangling nodded again and again, "That's why. If you want me to say, this face will not only be lost, but it would be better to lose it greatly. Mother, let your newspaper report it, and this magistrate, although he didn't take the initiative to help Zuda and others do bad things, but he also condoned it. Being an official is not upright. I think it would be good to get a middle or lower grade in this year's official evaluation." Little Xiang followed that store to the government office today. Although the prefect didn't help Wang Ping invade the store's restaurant, he didn't help the store to uphold justice. This conniving attitude made Wang Ping even more arrogant. Although he was afraid of offending Zuda and incurring revenge, it was wrong for him to do nothing. If all officials were like him, why would the people want officials? Both Xiao Xiang and Mu Yangling resolutely handed over to the government for disposal, and successfully suppressed Chi Heiran's opinion 2-1. Chi Heiran thought that they would stay here for a day, so he readily agreed. Xiao Xiang excitedly escorted the people to the yamen, and posted a notice that anyone who had their property embezzled by them could report to the government, and the government would deal with it. Government. Zuda, who had prepared a lot to say, was taken to the prison without even seeing Chi Heiran's face. After being beaten by the little bear, the magistrate respectfully knelt down to the south, kowtowed for the grace, and when he stood up again, his face was full of sternness. He was timid, so he tolerated the Zhu family again and again, and he never dared to talk to the Zhu family. Cooperation, but at this time he saw the royal family's attitude from the eldest son, so what else should he be afraid of? Anyway, he must have failed the evaluation this year, and he will probably be demoted or sent home next year, so he might as well be tough for a while, so that he can have a clear conscience. As a result, Zhu Jiyi and the others received cordial greetings from the prefect. And Mu Yangling in the general's mansion was preparing dinner for Chi Heiran in the kitchen. The servants in the mansion were all caught by Xiao Xiang and taken to the mansion office for interrogation. Even things like boiling water were done by the guards themselves. The food the guards ate could be ordered directly from the restaurant, but the medicinal food that Chi Heiran wanted to eat was only she can do it herself. Chi Heiran ate the meal made by his wife himself, and said, "Actually, we can stay for 2 more days. No, we'll go back tomorrow. My father has already taken office in Taiyuan Mansion. My mother will take the whole family to take office after the autumn harvest. If we delay, we won't have time to spend with my mother." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1111. Zuda's family has a very special status in Jingzhou Mansion. Although they are slaves, they have the ability to surpass the magistrate. Even the deeply rooted Li family in Jingzhou Mansion gave way to them. In the whole Northland, their Zhu family also had some scruples about the Mu family, but the Mu family is in Xingzhou Mansion, and there is a Hanshong Mansion in the middle. Zhaofu didn't dare to say that he walks sideways, and swaggering was always not a problem. In the past few years, they have been bullying people a lot, so when they were released from prison, although the people did not set off firecrackers to celebrate, they still clapped their hands and were very happy. And the family that disturbed the pool of water in Jingzhou Mansion had already set off early the next morning. The magistrate who rushed to see them off could only see the back of their carriage, and he didn't dare to chase after them, but dismounted and kowtowed in the direction of the 5 carriages. The entanglement and pain that had been haunting his heart had been answered yesterday, and even if his official position was lost later, what he had done in the past few days was enough for him to have a clear conscience. Little Xiong didn't know how much his behavior of escorting people to the yamen had affected this adult, so much so that he was still very puzzled when this well-known upright official bowed to him in public to thank him. Mu Yangling and the others set off in the morning and entered Xingzhou Mansion in the afternoon. From a distance, Mu Yangling heard someone calling her, and hurriedly opened the curtain to see. Ziyuheng was sitting on a carriage and beckoning to her from a distance. She jumped out of the carriage holding Lu Lang's hand to run towards them. Mu Yangling hurriedly said to Little Bear, "Go and stop your aunt Ziyuheng, we are here almost there." Little Xiong rushed to the horse, and when Mu Yangling and his carriage arrived, they heard Ziyuheng pulling Little Bear and joking, "It's exactly the same as your father when he was a child." Mu Yangling looked around, but there was no trace of Bowen. Feeling a little disappointed, Ziyuheng smiled and said, "I blame you for not delivering letters home. Bowen is still on the embankment with someone. We heard people say yesterday Daki's princes and concubines arrived at Jingzhou Mansion and cleaned up the slaves in the hidden mansion, and only then did we know that you are coming, and my cousin and aunt called us to pick you up overnight." Mu Bosi, like Mu Yangling, was born with great strength. This time he went to the battlefield with Mu Shi, but because of the different regions in charge, he only had time to meet his elder sister twice before they separated. Mu Shi was even busier. After Qi Heiran was injured, he had to take people to chase UN soldiers before he returned to Zhongdu City. Later, he didn't return to the city at all, and went to guard Taiyuan halfway. But Mu Bowen didn't stay in the capital after passing the Jinshi examination, but applied for an official position in Baidi, starting from a small county magistrate, and now he is the magistrate of a prefecture. Because of the increasing number of natural disasters in the past 2 years, he attached great importance to the water conservancy projects in the Northland, and spent almost 1/3 of the year on river embankments and canals. There was only one daughter waiting to be married by Shu's side, so when she learned that the eldest daughter was coming back, she had to ask Ziyuheng to bring the housekeeper to pick her up. Backed by the Mu family, Lu Lang and Ziyuheng devoted themselves to running a farm and selling all kinds of agricultural and livestock products all over the Northland. It can be said that the business is also doing very well. They bought a big house in Xingzhou Mansion early on and settled down. Mu Shi and the second son went out to fight, and Bowen took his wife and children with him. It can be said that Shu and Kijia were taken care of by them. Mu Yangling is also very grateful to Ziyuheng. She is far away, and she may only see her mother a few times in her life, let alone such things as filial piety, so she can only ask Ziyuheng to take care of Shu Wanyang more in the future. Ziyuheng smiled and said, "I was brought up by my cousin and aunt. I should be filial to her. If you ask me like this again, I will be angry." "That's what I said, but I still want to thank you." "Okay, I'll take your thanks." Ziyuheng changed the subject and said, "My grandmother and uncle are old, so it's good if you come back, otherwise." Ziyuheng wiped away her tears and said with a smile, "This time you can stay longer when you go home, and go back to the village to have a look. You don't know, you have become a myth among everyone, you are extremely rare." Mu Yangling laughed and asked, "Who is bragging about this?" Who else is, of course uncle and the others. You don't know how many people have been blessed by your blessings. All the folks in our area rely on your blessings to live a good life. Seeing that Mu Yangling was confused, Ziyuheng smiled and said, "You'll understand when you go to see it some other day. Auntie is anxious to see you." Mu Yangling looked out, and the Xingzhou mansion outside was no longer what he remembered, only a vague impression. Ziyuheng explained, "Xingzhou mansion is also very prosperous now. Although it is still not as good as Jingzhou mansion and Hanzhong mansion, but because it is no longer a border gate, the people live and work in peace and contentment. In the first few years, the weather has been smooth, and the businessmen who come and go are getting more and more day by day. There are many, so it is very prosperous. My cousin bought a large area on the street in front of me, and opened up all of them to make the general's mansion." Mu Yangling was curious, "Why buy such a big house? My family has few people, so I can't live here." Ziyuheng smiled and said, "My cousin is feeling sorry for my aunt. When I came back from the capital that year, my aunt was a little sad. In order to please my aunt, my cousin said he would build a big garden for her. I have bought the mansion of my family, and I want to build a big garden. For this, my cousin almost spent all his savings. It was later that Brother Fan asked someone to send bonuses, so life was easier. That kid Bosi even teased his cousin, Qing Yuxiao, was chased and beaten by my uncle." Mu Yangling couldn't help laughing when he heard it. The carriage stopped in front of the general's mansion, and Mu Yangling suddenly felt a little bit like his hometown. Qi Heiran had already gotten off from another carriage, and Lu Lang supported him vaguely, for fear that he would affect the wound, but Qi Heiran strode forward and opened the curtain, and stretched out his hand to Mu Yangling. "Come down, mother-in-law is still waiting. What about us?" Mu Yangling grabbed Qi Heiran's hand, walked out and took a look, and saw his mother standing on the steps looking at her with tears in her eyes. Mu Yang's heart was sour, and he almost shed tears. The little bear has already happily ran up to Shu Wanyang and bowed to Shu Wanyang. "You are my grandmother? Why do I look at you like my aunt?" The big girl next to Shu Wanyang burst into laughter, but Shu Wanyang hugged the little bear distressedly, grabbed his hand and said, "How can you be so black? But you are tired from fighting? Your mother is too. How old are you? How dare you let you go to the battlefield?" Mu Yangling had already jumped out of the carriage, took Qi Heiran's hand and walked forward, looking at Shu Wanyang with a pursed smile. "Mother." "Hey," Shu Wanyang's tears rolled down. She wiped away her tears after a while and said, "It's good that I'm back, it's good that I'm back." Looking at her daughter, she couldn't express the blame she blurted out to Xiaoxiang just now. She held Mu Yangling's hand tightly, and cried, "Why are you so thin?" Mu Yangling couldn't help laughing. He, she has been raised with Qi Heiran for nearly 2 months, and it can be said that her condition is the best among all, and she feels fatter than when she was in the capital. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1112. Uncle Lu Daqian, Lu Erqian, and Aunt Malayashi were waiting for them in the main room. When they saw Qi Heiran, their knees softened and they were about to kneel. "It's only for you to salute, uncle and aunt, sit down quickly." Mu Yangling also hurriedly stepped forward to help stop the person, preventing Qi Heiran from dragging the wound with force. Lu Daqian is very old, and he walks on the back of his descendants, but he is still very powerful. He finalized the guest list this time. He knows that Aling doesn't like troublesome people, so he brought Mu Yangling is familiar with people. But this is already a lot. They haven't seen each other for more than 10 years, so they are all a little unfamiliar, but with Ziyuheng joking among them, everyone gradually becomes familiar with each other. Speaking of it, they introduced their lives, then expressed their gratitude to Mu Yangling, and then everyone dispersed after having dinner together. Although everyone wanted to stay and deepen their relationship, seeing that Mrs. Shu had already smiled and prepared gifts for them in return, they could only leave with their things. In the end, only Lu Ting and Lu Yuan stayed to accompany Lu Daqian, Lu Erqian, and the aunt's family. The crowd dispersed, and the room became quiet all at once, and my aunt pushed Mu Yangling, "Take my uncle to rest, isn't it said that my uncle is injured? Go, go." Because Malu lived with the Mu family later, when the living conditions improved, his body was stronger than his two younger brothers, Lu Daqian and Lu Erqian. Mu Yangling got up and pulled Qi Heiran and Xiao Xiang, "Then you should rest earlier, we will talk tomorrow if we have something to say." Mu Qijia took the initiative to lead the way for her sister. "Mother has kept my sister's yard and cleaned it from time to time, and the furnishings in the house haven't been moved much. We cleaned it up as soon as we heard the news yesterday afternoon. Fortunately, it's autumn. You can live with just a little wind." Mu Yangling asked his servants to bring hot water for Qi Heiran and his son to take a bath, and he dragged Mu Qijia to sit in the main room to chat. "Last time my mother wrote to me, saying that your wedding date is set in August, why did you change it again, gone?" Mu Qijia pouted and said, "It's not that you guys are going to fight." He was ordered to guard the border. "Originally, I wanted to advance the wedding date, but my father and mother said nothing. I know, they are afraid that something will happen to him on the battlefield, and I will be a widow." Mu Yangling pinched her mouth. "It's really open-mouthed, I dare to say anything. There's nothing to be afraid of. He knows it. He himself said that he doesn't want me to marry so early. Why should I be afraid? How good he is to me, as long as father is to mother, brother-in-law is half to you." Mu Qijia has a lively personality, which is completely different from the prudent Mu Yangling. She has lived a happy life since she was a child. She has two older brothers who love her, and a father who wholeheartedly sets an example for her wife. Including cousin Lang's dedication to cousin Ziyuheng, so she has very high requirements. From Jiji, she has set out conditions. Not only must she be good at both civil and military skills, but also that she likes her, and never takes concubines wholeheartedly. Generally, it is difficult for those who meet the former and the middle one to achieve the latter one, but those who can guarantee the latter one, either she doesn't like it, or they don't match the former at all, or they have other ideas and want to borrow her be a springboard for upward struggle. If Mu Qijia had a lot of experience, she would just turn a blind eye and close one eye. But she is innocent and romantic, pursues perfection, and doesn't rub the sand in her eyes at all. And Xu Wanyang has been cared for by her husband all her life, and her eldest daughter is also happily married, so even in marriage, the four words consistent with one's heart are important. How can I live well? Therefore, even though she remembered bubbling at the corners of her mouth and insomnia day and night, she still did not force her daughter to be engaged. Seeing that his wife was like this, Mu Shi still insisted on finding a suitable husband for his daughter, so naturally he would not force her, so Mu Qijia stayed until he was 20. In this era when girls from ordinary families were married at the age of 14, and those from wealthier families were married at the age of 18 at the latest, 20-year-olds were considered older leftover girls. What's more, Mu Qijia didn't find the man he wanted until he was 20. After the other party passed the assessment of his father-in-law and mother-in-law, he decided to marry him. Qijia was already 20 and went to 21. Originally, they wanted to get married in autumn, before she turned 21, but who knew that the moment they got married in February, the imperial court's dispatch order came down. As a school lieutenant, the man had to follow his superiors to guard the border to prevent Xixia from changing. Swords and guns are silent on the battlefield. Mu Shi and Xu Wanyang dare not let their daughter marry in advance. They can only delay, when the war will end, and when will the wedding be held. But now that the war is over, they have indeed won a big victory, and the man is safe and sound. The two parties are now rescheduling to hold their wedding at the winter solstice this year. Go to Taiyuan and let Mu Qijia get married in Taiyuan. Mu Qijia looked carefree, but in the past few years, she has been tossed about for marriage. She has seen all kinds of men and families. It can be said that although her experience is not as rich as that of her elder sister, in terms of the experience of strange men, she is more advanced. It is far better than her sister, that's why she feels so sad when she mentions this matter. Although she has now found a man who she likes, who also likes her, who is both civil and military, and who can swear to marry her only once in his life, he has gone through all kinds of trials and hardships, unlike her sister and brother-in-law, who were childhood sweethearts and grown up. They were in love with each other, and they came together naturally. Where is the relationship between them comparable to this pair? In the hall just now, although my sister was sitting with them, she looked at her brother-in-law from time to time, and the brother-in-law never left her eyes. Mukijia hugged Mu Yangling's waist, and said sourly, "Sister, I also have many childhood sweethearts, why do you think they don't like me?" Mu Yangling asked amusedly, "Is there someone you like there?" Mukijia was about to cry, "No, when I was young, I robbed them of toys. I was strong, but they couldn't rob me. Whenever I was beaten, I would cry. How could I like them? When they grow up, they are also afraid. I'm very angry, they run away as soon as I raise my hand, I'm not violent by nature, can I beat them all the time?" Mukijia looked at her sister enviously, "Sister, you never beat your brother-in-law when you were young? Could it be that he was not afraid of you? Daddy said that you are much stronger than us, even Bosi is only as powerful as your finger." Mu Yangling laughed loudly, thought about it seriously, and said, "I really beat your brother-in-law, but we are competing and learning from each other, not just fighting. Don't rely on your strength in the future, just bully my brother-in-law, if he makes a mistake, you can reason with him, and if you can't reason, then consider doing it." Mukijia said disappointedly, "Although I have great strength, but he has great kung fu, I can't beat him."